Plants are discussed in your book from page 302, and it shows some really good examples in there of trees and greenery. So I just wanted to flash through those quickly to help you to see some possibilities, different types of plants. The book, does a bit more watercolor than we are doing here, but all of these washy things you can get by using your blender. And just put a wash of marker underneath and then some pencil and some line on top. That's today's discussion. Last quarter, we talked about black and white plants, right? So you did some things that were sort of creative and a little bit messy, right? It's important to not have them be too rigid. The main thing that happens with beginners is that they make plants that are, right, left, up and down on a grid. So you kind of want to have anything natural up a little bit messy so that it's got some sort of nature thing in it. Remember we talked about these puff plants that we created last quarter, and then we talked about lighting coming from this angle, so you can see how we shaded this side a little bit more than over there. So we're going to do that as well to achieve some of the kind of stuff that we see in the book. Just a few examples of demonstrations I've done in the past. But to get started, you want to draw the vase. So, if I'm going to put a floral arrangement into this vase here, then I want to do the ellipse practice like we did at the beginning of the quarter. Set up an ellipse each time the vase changes shape. Make sure those ellipses are lining up. Making this below eye level. I can change this a bit if I want to modify it or make it more interesting. Let's say I want to do it more like a bottle, like this. Just because. Now, flowers, usually I start by just drawing some lines up like this. So I'm just getting the sense that there's some fronds or some stalks going up, stems of flowers. Flowers always have some kind of a support, piece of wood, a line that goes up through there. You all know this because when you were kids, you were probably taught to draw trees like this, right? And then to put leaves on those trees. So we're going to do the same kind of thing. We're going to get some stems to support it, have them come out of here. If I want to do a planter, a pot, I get some idea of what it's going to do. I don't have to do this drawing really very well. You can tell this ellipse is tipping here, all that kind of stuff. I'm just drawing it lightly and loosely right now because I'm going to go in with my markers and I'm going to finalize it at the end, and those marks are the ones that I'm going to want to have be exact and true. For now, I'm just trying to get an idea of what I'm going to do with this. So I put some scribbly lines in. Now, if I want to draw some flowers like these here, then I'm going to take these stalks, I'm going to draw them up, and I'm going to just do a little symbol and representation of those kind of things in there a little bit with my pen, here and there. I kind of think in a circle here, so I'm constraining it to a round area above. Maybe I want to put some fronds up here or some leafy kind of things coming out of the plant like so. Sometimes the leaves all flop over the front rim of your vase or your planter. That's good enough for what I'm doing in pen. my next step is to go ahead into some greens and blues. So I'm going to take my markers. Once again, I'm going to have a scratch sheet over here so that I'm not doing my final drawing with a bunch of crazy marks next to it, but I want to know what kind of colors I'm using. So I'm going to start putting some greens up here in the stems. Definitely want some greens here in the leaves. I may want to use the thicker edge of my marker to just get an impression on what those leaves are doing. So I wasn't too careful here. I'm just like stroking in there, making some marks. I want to get some yellow in there. Green is made of blue and yellow, right? So I'm going to jump to a yellow to give myself some contrast and a richer, more interesting green. And I'm going to go to blues. Try and find myself a blue that works in there a little bit. So now I've got some blues in my greens and some yellows in my greens, and if I go blue into the yellow, I'm going to get a different kind of green. Blues also are useful if I'm trying to make the light come from one direction. I can put a little bit more blue into the left side of this, and that's going to deepen and darken it over on the left side as if I have a shadow coming in to this side of these plants. The first time you do it, you'll probably do too much. I like to leave a little bit of white showing through, so you may want to think about that. Let's make this a little bit of yellow flowers. Now, sometimes I'm filling in the pen marks that I made, and sometimes I'm going off of them. Remember how we talked about Andy Warhol and how he had the off-kilter or off-register print kind of thing? So sometimes I'm putting yellow marks where I had black marks, and sometimes I'm not. When I go into red, I want to have a pretty hot red because I want it to read out. So in this case, I'm using really bright colors because I want these flowers to really pop. And nature does that too, right? Our eyes are cued for blue and green. That's why walks in nature are so relaxing to us. So there's a lot of blue and green in nature, right? The trees and the sky and the grass and all of that. And then you get little pops of these brighter colors. If you have too much of that in any environment, then you want to leave. It's kind of like being at McDonald's where it's not just fast food. They want you to eat fast and clear the table so they can get the next person in there, right? So they've painted all that in really hot, really warm colors. But they're fun to have in a flower arrangement. So you can play with that all you want. You also can go in with your pencils and create either literal lines around the outside edges of these things to make them look more like flowers, or you can go in and put little dots. You can tap in here if you want to just give the idea that there's some stuff and things in there. You know, you don't even have to know what it is. You just feel like maybe it needs some more color or something, right? Usually at the end, I will take my green pencil or I will take a green marker and do some more fronds in the background. This one, for instance, isn't quite filled in enough, so I'm going to take a lighter green, maybe kind of a greenish blue, and sort of do something like this in there. Because what that's going to do is it's going to weight it to the bottom. It's going to sort of solidify this. Now, you can take your colorless blender, and this is one case where I do use my colorless blender. If you make a mark with a pencil and you go over top of it with a colorless blender, you're going to soften that mark and you're going to let that mark soak down into the fibers of the paper. So I often will take a pencil and make some marks, and then I'll go over it a little bit with my colorless blender to sort of put it back down in. I always want to have a sheet of paper or a piece of cardboard nearby when I do that, because it's going to put wax into the end of my colorless blender. So you can see how that's making a blue mark. I just rub it back and forth until it stops making those marks. And once it's drawing white again or clear, then even though I see here that there's a stain in my colorless blender, when I go to make a mark with it, it's not making a mark of a color, so I'm okay with that in terms of cleaning. These vases, now if I want to keep my concept that the light is coming from this direction, right? This vase I want to make, what, purple? I haven't done any purple yet. So I'm going to take my purples over here, I'm going to make some marks, I'm going to decide how dark I want to go. I don't want it that dark, I want it this dark. Therefore, I want to go lighter because I never start with the color that I want to end up with. And I'm out of purple, so I'm going to try that pink. I don't love that, so I'm going to take this purpley pink pencil. I'm going to draw over top of that pink. And look how now I've got something that's going to blend those two. So I know if I do this pink, this pencil, that purple, then I can get light, medium, dark of the same thing, right? So the color I want to end up with is this color here. Maybe that's my medium color. I'm just going to go for broke and shade this whole thing in. Notice at the top of this how I'm bending the line to keep with my cross contour. I can either shade it up and down that way, or I can shade it across this way. I'm saying shade and I mean tone actually. I want you to color it using cross contour marks just like we did at the beginning of the quarter. All right. Where that goes into the dark, I want to have a shadow core. So I could take a blue over here. So if I've done this inside of my my final drawing, and I don't want to muck it up, and I'm not sure whether I'm going to go with this dark purple or whether I'm going to go blue on top, then I'm going to come over here onto my sheet again, and I'm going to make myself a swatch of color that looks something like that vase. And I'm going to try the blue on it, and I'm going to try the purple on it. See how I get two really different effects here? This is much more gray and this is much more intense, right? Usually when you go around the corner, you don't want to get more intense. Go around the corner, I mean, if you go into the shadow, you want it to be grayed out. You also have the option of going with your grays. So let's take a 30% gray and see what happens on that. That actually gives me a shadow over here. So if I take this 30% and I say it's going to happen on this half of the vase, I can use this then to go in and do maybe a shadow core here. This is one place I am going to use my blender because this is going to be a really rough mark. See how rough that is? Now watch this. Take my blender, smooth that out, just like on TV. All right. Want to move it with my cross contour marks. Now I've got a good sense of light and shadow. When I go here onto the table, I'm definitely use my gray so that I've got a contrasting color, casting a shadow out there with a 30%. Maybe I'm going to go 50% right up against it. So I get a nice contrast, and you feel like that guy's sitting right there on the table. Okay? This up here may need a little bit more of a very light green in this area. Or if you want to have it full of orange flowers, you know, you want a really flowery, bushy kind of thing, you can go in and back that all up with something else so that you get more of the effect of something like this. Right? If you had a vase that was just a lot of color, then you would be going into that. With some of that pink that I had before, probably a really light pink if I've got one. Whoop, that's brown, don't want to do that. Where's my pinky pink? That's much lighter. I thought I had like a washed out. Probably have like a pink up here in my brown. This is putty. That's brown again. All right, so my markers aren't getting me a light enough pink. I'm going to use my pencil. This is actually a nice transition between those two, and I could put this on top of putty and get a real flesh tone there. That's really nice. And then if I don't like the look of that pink, so let's say I'm going to start drawing these kind of flowers like this, you know, just an idea with that pencil. Probably want to go in with some of this over top of it. This is quite large. Probably bigger than I want it to be, actually, in any given drawing, but I see with this flower there's sort of this this darkness in the middle, so I'm going to express that a little bit. You may want to go into it like this and draw one from the front, for instance, one from the side, right? And kind of think about how these guys should look a little bit on a practice sheet before you get them drawn in your vase. Here I am going back to the way my sister taught me to draw flowers when I was 7. I think I want to go a little bit deeper into it, so I'm going to take this purple, because purple and blue, purple and pink will make a red kind of tone. This is where I envy Bob Ross. He can talk and draw at the same time. If I do something like this and it doesn't work, right, then I'm not going to include it in my final drawing. If I am in my final drawing, I might take my colorless blender. Here it is. And actually rub into it, and it sort of reduces the effect of that. So now I just have like a blue in there. It's not so hard, and that actually looks much better than it did before. I don't love it yet, so the key to that is to just kind of keep on working. You keep going with your next idea. Soften it. I need maybe some white through it. I can come in and do this. This will be very subtle, but you'll see it in the end, and it'll make it look a little bit better. Try and get rid of that fleshy tone a little bit with that white pencil. It could be that that's going to look just fine when I get some green going behind it and next to it. Because it could be that this is in a pot with a bunch of green. And indeed it does, because pink and green are complementary, right? Pink is desaturated red, which is straight across the color wheel from green. All right, down here, if I want to make my pot look a little bit terracotta, I'm going to find a crayon, a marker that looks like I want it to. And do something like that. All right. started putting that down. It seems a little dark to me, so I'm going to go one step lighter on the side of the vase where I want the light to come from. And then to enhance that, I might even go in with a reddish brown and put myself a shadow core right along here. Now this light in here looks incongruous, right? Normally you would have shadow in there. So I'm going to not really put brown in there, I'm going to put green. And I think that will anchor my plant down in the thing. I don't love it, so I'm going to try brown. Better. I can go a little gray over that too. Maybe I'll take a 50% gray. And this all comes with time. You know, you gotta, they say a good artist knows when to quit. You don't know when to quit until you've gone too far. So you're gonna muck it up a couple times. So I'm gonna recommend always that you have a practice sheet, try this out, do a few things first, and then go on to your final drawing. I'm also cementing this or creating more of an anchor down at the bottom by pulling some of this gray up through there. I'm sure it needs some more of this green too to sort of bring these fronds and leaves down in. Now when you're done, you want to take your 5 again, and sort of clean this up and make it do. Don't outline every leaf. Go on one side of the leaves or draw sometimes where you haven't done, just like we talked about up here. I can come up in here and I can do some flowery type shapes up here. Flowery shapes is the technical term. And I can come into here and I can do some things that'll sort of give this a little bit more. The black line is going to tie it in with the rest of the picture. It's going to make your drawing seem a little bit more unified, right? Because unity and harmony is definitely one of the things that we want to have in a good drawing. So I'm taking this line around here, I'm sort of cleaning up my mess. This is really chaotic and messy down here. I don't like it at all. So I'm going to take my 0.5 pen. I'm going to say, this is what I meant to do. And I really want this to get one step better each time I do something with it. All right? So that gives you a quick example of some of the kinds of things that you can do. See how this one has the sort of the random number 5 pen just on top of it. After I was done coloring all this, I just went in and I put in just a little bit here and there to make these guys look one step better.